He looked away from them so he wouldn't have to talk to them. His eyes fell instead on the girl next to Crumb. His jaw dropped. It was Hermione. But she didn't look like Hermione at all. She had done something with her hair.
It's 9 o'clock.
Wow, that was the computer telling me it's 9 o'clock, and I got my phone yelling at me. Let's snooze this thing here. Okay. She didn't look like Hermione at all. She had done something with her hair. It was no longer bushy, but sleek and shiny, and twisted up into an elegant knot at the back of her head. She was wearing robes made of a floaty periwinkle blue material, and she was holding herself differently. Somehow, or maybe it was merely the absence of the 20 or so books she usually had slung over her back. She was also smiling rather nervously, it was true, but the reduction in the size of her front teeth was more noticeable than ever. Harry couldn't understand how he hadn't spotted it before. "Hi, Harry," she said. "Hi, Pavarti." Pavarti was gazing at Hermione in unflattering disbelief. She wasn't the only one either. When the doors to the great hall opened, Crumb's fan club from the library stalked past, throwing Hermione looks of deepest loathing. Pansy Parkinson gaped at her as she walked by with Malfoy, and even he didn't seem to be able to find an insult to throw at her. Ron, however, walked right past Hermione without looking at her. Once everyone else was settled in the hall, Professor McGonagall told the champions and their partners to get in line in pairs and to follow her. They did so, and everyone in the great hall applauded as they entered and started walking up toward a large round table at the top of the hall where the judges were sitting. The walls of the hall had all been covered in sparkling silver frost, with hundreds of garlands and mistletoe and ivy crossing the starry black ceiling. The house the house tables had vanished. Instead, there were about 100 smaller lantern-lit tables, each seating about a dozen people. Harry concentrated on not tripping over his feet. Pavarti seemed to be enjoying herself. She was beaming around at everyone, steering Harry so forcefully that he felt as though he were in a show. He felt as though he were a show dog she was putting through its paces. He caught sight of Ron and Padma as he neared the top table. Ron was watching Hermione pass with narrowed eyes. Padma was looking sulky. Dumbledore smiled happily as the champions approached the top table, but Karkaroff wore an expression remarkably like Ron's as he watched Krum and Hermione draw nearer. Ludo Bagman, tonight in robes of bright purple with large yellow stars, was clapping as enthusiastically as any of the students, and Madame Maxime, who had changed her usual uniform of black satin for a flowing gown of lavender silk, was applauding them politely. But Mr. Crouch, Harry suddenly realized, was not there. The fifth seat at the table was occupied by Percy Weasley. When the champions and their partners reached the table, Percy drew out the empty chair beside him, staring pointedly at Harry. Harry took the hint and sat down next to Percy, who was wearing brand new navy blue dress robes, and an expression of such smugness that Harry thought it ought to be fined. "I've been promoted," Percy said before Harry could even ask, and from his tone, He might have been announcing his election as supreme ruler of the universe. I'm now Mr. Crouch's personal assistant, and I'm here representing him. Why didn't he come? Harry asked. He wasn't looking forward to being lectured on cauldron bottoms all through dinner. I'm afraid to say Mr. Crouch isn't well, not well at all. Hasn't been right since the World Cup. Hardly surprising. Overwork. He's not as young as he was, though still quite brilliant, of course. The mind remains as great as it ever was, but the World Cup was a fiasco for the whole ministry, and then Mr. Crouch suffered a huge personal shock with the misbehavior of that house elf of his, Blinky, or whatever she was called. Naturally, he dismissed her immediately afterward, but, well, as I say, he's getting on. He needs looking after, and I think he's found a definite drop in his home comforts since she left. And then we had the tournament to arrange and the aftermath of the cup to deal with, that revolting Skeeter woman buzzing around. No, poor man, he's having a well-earned, quiet Christmas. I'm just glad he knew he had someone he could rely upon to take his place. Harry wanted very much to ask whether Mr. Crouch had stopped calling Percy Weatherby yet, but resisted the temptation. There was no food as yet on the glittering golden plates, but small menus were lying in front of each of them. Harry picked his up uncertainly and looked around. There were no waiters. Dumbledore, however, looked carefully down at his own menu, then said very clearly to his plate, "Pork chops." And pork chops appeared. Getting the idea, the rest of the table placed their orders with their plates, too. Harry glanced up at Hermione to see how she felt about this new and more complicated method of dining. Surely it meant plenty of extra work for the house elves. But for once, Hermione didn't seem to be thinking about SPEW. She was deep in talk with Victor Crumb and hardly seemed to notice what she was eating. It now occurred to Harry that he had never actually heard Crumb speak before, but he was certainly talking now, and very enthusiastically at that. "Well, we have a castle also, but as big as this, not as comfortable. I am thinking," he was telling Hermione. "We have just 4 floors, and the fires are lit only for magical purposes. But we have grounds rather larger even than these, though in the winter we have very delight, so we are not enjoying them. But in the summertime we are flying every day over the lakes and the mountains." Now, Victor," said Karkaroff with a laugh that didn't reach his cold eyes. "Don't go giving away everything else now, or your charming friend will know exactly where to find us." Dumbledore smiled, his eyes twinkling. "Igor, all this secrecy. One would almost think you didn't want visitors." "Well, Dumbledore," said Karkaroff, displaying his yellowing teeth to their fullest extent, "we are all protective of our private domains, aren't we? Do we not jealously guard the halls of learning that have been entrusted to us? Are we not right to be proud that we alone know our school's secrets, and right to protect them?" "Oh, I would never dream of assuming I know all Hogwarts secrets, Igor," said Dumbledore amicably. "Only this morning, for instance, I took a wrong turn on the way to the bathroom
and found myself in a beautifully proportioned room I have never seen before, containing a rather magnificent collection of chamber pots. When I went back to investigate more closely, I discovered that the room had vanished, but I must keep an eye out for it. Possibly it is only accessible at 5:30 in the morning, or it may only appear at the quarter moon, or when the seeker has an exceptionally full bladder.
Okay, just in case you caught it, I know I said exceptionably. But that was me reading too far ahead and seeing bladder, and my mouth was getting ahead of me. Okay. Oh, goodness, that's 11 minutes, too. Okay. Yeah. Holy mackerel. Alrighty then. I guess we're just going to stop there. So the Yule Ball has started. And Harry is at the same table as Dumbledore and all the champions, I guess. Okay. Guess that's it.